There's an alarming amount of online content of women freezing their eggs, not the kind that you eat for breakfast.
Day 1 of freezing my eggs, that wasn't so bad.
This is the growing narrative. You aren't where you want to be financially, you haven't found a man yet, and the dating scene is atrocious as we all know. Take control of your life and have the baby on your own timeline. And you need to prioritize your career first before you really think about any of that anyways. And with our help in freezing your eggs, you can do all of that first and then have a baby. When the timing is just right and you're at the right age of 37, trust us, it'll work. There are a couple of really big problems with this whole thing though. For starters, egg freezing really does look like a scam when you look at the numbers. But what I'm also concerned about is the narrative of how women are looking at motherhood and children in general, which we will get to later. For now, we need to talk about the scam. It really does seem like a scam. There's this meta-analysis that studied women who underwent egg freezing for the purposes of delaying fertility, and it showed that a live birth was reported for just 28.9% of women who returned to thaw their eggs. 28.9% is really bad odds for how much this all costs, which is like tens of thousands of dollars. Dr. Vardit Ravitsky is the president of a bioethics institute. She recently went on 60 Minutes to warn that egg freezing isn't actually pausing your biological clock like so many women think that it is.
You're taking a bet. It's a gamble that you'll actually need these eggs. It's a gamble that it would work. And even if you manage to get pregnant, the older you are, the riskier it is to be pregnant. So you're taking multiple risks. You're gambling on multiple stages.
In this interview, the process of egg freezing is kind of explained as an upside down funnel, in that you start the process collecting and freezing as many eggs as you can. And then you have to return later to thaw the eggs, which many will not survive. And then you fertilize the eggs, which many will not survive. And then you attempt to implant the human embryo, which according to that meta-analysis that I mentioned earlier, only 44% survived the implantation process. We're like here in the funnel at this point. And then your baby must make it to a live birth, which only 28.9% did. There was another study in London with very similar results of the women who returned for their eggs. The live birth rate per embryo transferred was 26% in women 35 and under, 20% among 35 to 39, and 5% in women 40 and over. And yet the entire point of this service is to make women feel like they can wait until these later years to have a child. It's a gamble at best. And that's even if you show up to the gamble, because apparently most women who pay for the service and undergo the very intense physical process never end up coming back to thaw their eggs. Only 10.8% of women did in the meta-analysis encompassing 13,724 patients. But it's a risk that some women are willing to take because of the genuine, totally understandable anxiety regarding our lives not seeming to align very well with the biological alarm clock that is ticking away all of the time. I think this brings up a really interesting conversation around how young women are thinking about motherhood. And what I'm noticing is that more and more it's considered genuinely irresponsible to even consider having a child in your early 20s, if at all. If you scroll TikTok for a few minutes as a young left-leaning woman in particular, you will almost certainly be fed this idea. Let me demonstrate. I have to go into my burner account in which I play the role of a very young left-leaning woman. And not crazy left-leaning, just slightly. These are videos I found within minutes.
My mom had my brother at 33 and me at 36. So I've just always known, God willing, I'm gonna have my kids. Early 30s to mid 30s. For me personally, the pros were more time with my husband, just him and I. Maturing a little bit. I still feel like a child. Getting established in my career. Traveling. There's so many places I still want to travel.
That's that video. Next video.
So I often get asked, would I have children? So I'm 25 now and I don't plan to have them until my mid-30s. Here's why. Number one, I want to make sure I'm in a financial position where I don't have to really worry about money at all. So obviously my career at the moment is going very well and I post my income breakdowns, but that's not always guaranteed. I want to be in a position where I've got 5-10 years of proof that I consistently make that income. That's when I'll feel confident being self-employed that I am able to make enough money to sustain myself and a family. Now that may seem excessive and some people might just have them earlier before they're financially ready to, but this is just my personal preference. Number two is I really want to make sure that I have achieved everything I want to in my career so that I never have any regrets or resentments to my children because I felt like I gave up something for them. I want to be in a position where I've seen and done every single thing, been traveling all around the world, built up my career, made $1 million, launched a physical business, a product, all of these different things I want to tick off the list before I consider starting a family. And yes, you can do do all of those things while having a family, but I watch so much motherhood content and it's so much harder. I think you have to work 10 times harder to get the same results because you are literally looking after another human being.
As you saw in those videos, it all kind of boils down to this idea that women should prioritize having children at the socially and professionally optimal time rather than the biologically optimal time. And I find that to be really problematic and kind of silly, to be so honest. I think it's kind of silly, to put it nicely. I could say a different word. Silly is going to be what I choose.
Gosh sake, watch your language.
It's all like you need to be the girl boss and mess around a little and grind and hustle and get your financial goals and then enjoy 5 years at least with your husband before having children and then have kids. And that timeline easily puts most women at age 30 at least to start trying to have their first child. But my question is, why are we prioritizing the socially optimal time over the biologically optimal time? The best analogy I could think of is actually the analogy my dad came up with. I cannot lie. It's like choosing to start investing in your retirement when you're 35, because that's when you are the most financially stable. And in your head, like, it's the easiest time to set aside a really good chunk of change. And when you're 20, you're not making as much at work. You feel like you can't afford to invest very much or anything at all. So what's the use as you drink the near daily $6 coffee and you need to travel to Machu Picchu first and all of this other stuff? So you plan to defer your retirement savings until it's more convenient and just makes a little bit more sense. And then you realize when you reach age 35 and you start investing that you actually should have started in your early 20s. You feel 10 years behind where you wanted to be, and there's no way to get that time back. Maybe you'll be making millions and millions of dollars and it won't matter that much, but most likely that won't be the case. Most likely you'll look back and be like, dang, I kind of wish I started that earlier, but I was too immature at that point to make that decision wisely, which is so funny because these videos that I just watched were like, once I'm 35, I'll be mature. And that's when I need to have kids. But I feel like once you reach age 35 and you're mature, you're like, oh dang, the more mature decision would have been to have children earlier if I could have, rather than waiting until I was 35 years old to start. The point that they are, I think, accidentally making is that like the immature decision is to wait. My opinion.
Just one man's opinion.
And again, it's not that like you must start having children when you're 21, but if you're married, start investing in children.
Yes, get married, make babies.
A woman's peak fertility years are in her early 20s. She has a high quantity of eggs and they are at their highest quality, meaning that they have normal DNA and strong composition, meaning you are more likely to get pregnant and have a healthy baby in this time. Not to mention, it's also quite apparent that physically speaking, the optimal time to be pregnant as a woman is when you're young. Pregnancy, labor, delivery, and postpartum outcomes all worsen progressively with maternal age. Women's egg quality starts to decline pretty quickly by her early 30s and then really takes a huge dive by her mid 30s. So by freezing her eggs before that sharp decline, a woman can preserve higher quality eggs and in theory be able to use them later. The issue is that it does not seem to be the case that women are told that they are only pausing their eggs. Like they're not pausing their own biological aging. Freezing your eggs freezes their age, but it doesn't freeze yours. How many times can I say freeze in a sentence?
I know. Free.
It's hitting snooze on a biological alarm clock that used to have no snooze button. But as we can all relate to, when you hit the snooze button, you sometimes miss the very thing that your alarm was set for in the first place. And in this analogy, I'm trying to say that freezing eggs with the goal of eventually having children will sometimes lead women to totally miss the opportunity to have children because freezing them didn't work. They didn't survive the thawing process or the implantation process. And that's why this all looks like such a scam to me. But it also indicates that we are perhaps looking at the decision to become mothers and the idea of having children through a distorted lens. We shouldn't expect children to arrive right at the perfect scheduled time that we want them to arrive at. And I think that we have totally adopted that mindset that we can plan out exactly when our children will arrive. I need to meet the guy by this time and we need to date for this amount of time. We need to be engaged for this amount of time. Then we need to get married. And then I kind of want to wait like a couple of years before I have a baby. We need to consider the fact that I might not get pregnant right away. So like, when do we have a child based on that? Like, it's just this like tight grip that we have on the idea of having children. That's just like not how it works. It's not how it works and it's not how it should work. Obviously, yes, you want to be wise about when you have a baby. There are times when you should actively avoid having a baby before you're married, for example. You responsibly avoid having a child by not having sex because that's like the one act that creates a child, as we all know. And if you do have sex and the baby arrives way outside of our personal schedule, we don't have a right to destroy them. But we are all told that we do by the fertility/abortion industry. And I say slash because they are extremely tight-knit and they're reliant on each other, quite frankly. If our womb so tragically does not allow for the creation and sustaining of a preborn child, we don't have a right to rent another woman's body, take the baby from her who the child knows to be mother, and then keep the child for ourselves. Again, the fertility industry does not care so much about the rights of the child here. They'll take your money and say, great job, you were such a great mother here. Even though that's not what we should do as adults, is force children to satisfy our desire to have them by denying their rights. Outside of the children's rights conversation, which is very important, I also think that this overplanned, tight-handed grip over having children at the perfectly planned moment, I think that is actually kind of immature. And let me explain. If you need everything to be really solid financially and you need to make sure that you're in this specific apartment first, and then the next 9 months need to be relatively free of big plans, and then the year after that, when the baby's like a newborn / toddler, very much reliant on you, the career has to be really promising so that we don't end up jobless when we have the baby. If everything just has to line up so perfectly, you'll never have the baby. You'll just never have the baby. Because from my own experience and many other of my friends' experiences, even when things do appear lined up, there's always that what if of like, what if I lose my job? What if we can't afford to pay the mortgage anymore? It's the unpredictability of life, and it's entirely impossible to avoid. And so if you are waiting for life to be predictable and to have the perfect plan and everything is done and you've made the $1 million and you have the great career and it's behind you now, you'll never have children. You'll never have them. I'm sure that most parents out there would say that at least one of their children arrived at a time that was extremely inconvenient, and yet they are so incredibly happy that the baby arrived then, at that moment, when they look back on it. My mom discovered that she was pregnant with my little brother 7 months postpartum after having twins. My dear mother. My sister and I were twins, and then we had an older sister who was just about 3.5 years older than us. My dad, who was extremely sick with pneumonia at the time, cried when he found out, and they were not tears of joy that he was crying. He was terrified and kind of upset. And then my brother was born, and for many years, life was genuinely very hard for my parents with 4 children under the age of 5. And yet they can say without a single doubt in their minds that their children were perfectly timed because it was not entirely up to them, because they were not so tight gripped on when the children arrived. Another kind of bitter fruit that I have tasted that kind of comes from this cultural idea that you need to wait to have babies until the socially optimal time is that once you are married, so many people will tell you, wait a few years until you have a baby so that you can just enjoy the time, the two of you. Like, at least wait 3 years. Try to wait 5. I just don't like the assumption that's baked into that advice. Even if it's well-intentioned, the underlying meaning of it is that you won't actually enjoy each other quite as much once you have kids. And that's just not the case. It's just not true at all. If you love that man now, before you have children, you will have 100 more reasons to love him once he's the father to your baby. That's just the truth. And I don't like that advice. I will never give that advice to anybody. Matter of fact, as you can tell from me making this video, I will say, have a baby as soon as you can, as soon as you get married. You at least have 9 months to wait. And quite frankly, 9 months is a very long time. Enjoy your time. And then when you have the baby, you'll be like, this was great. I have no regrets.
I try to pick up and hold a baby every day, if possible, because it nourishes me. It feeds my soul.
And I am not the girl who always wanted children and wanted to hold the baby and all this stuff. I thought the dynamic between my husband and I genuinely couldn't get better than when it was just the two of us. That was the main fear during my pregnancy with my first baby. It was that I wouldn't actually enjoy our relationship dynamic as much as once there were 3 of us. And I was pregnant just 9 months after getting married. Thank God that we had the baby when we did, and then we ignored the advice that we were given to wait for a little while. Because when our son was born, we felt like life restarted in the most wonderful and fun way possible. And this isn't just the biased opinion of a young mother. I also saw plenty of videos from women who did choose to wait to have children until their 30s because it seemed like the responsible and right thing to do for their families. But now they think they may have made a mistake because they'll be so much older for their grown children and they'll have less time with their children at the end of it. And of course, also with their grandchildren.
This is why I regret having kids later in life. I had my first daughter at 34 and I had my second daughter at 36. And we waited to have kids on purpose. My husband is 7 years older, so he was 41 or 42 when we had our first daughter. And I was an entrepreneur. I was building a business. We just wanted more financial stability. So we were married 10 years before we actually had children. Now I'm 39 and I really wish we would have had another kid. And yes, is it still possible? Of course. But my husband is 46. We've got that age gap. I don't want him to be a literal grandpa if we had another kid. And it just makes me sad. I wish we would have tried a little bit sooner. I was girl boss, ran a business for 15 years before children. And as soon as I had kids, I was like, oh, this is what I was made for. And I love being a mom. I'm a stay-at-home mom now. I think women don't think about that. I think we were just taught be a girl boss, grind, work hard, have a big career.
Here's how it can kind of happen. Before you have babies, the thing that matters most is making sure that the career is good and making sure that you have enough money to start a family and all of these things. And then once you do have children, your mindset shifts to all of a sudden the only thing that matters is having more time with my kids. And unfortunately, like this woman shows, she had her children later because she felt like it was the more mature decision. And then once she was in that more mature age of 35 and she had children, she realized it actually may have not been the most mature decision. And she wishes that she would have had them earlier. It's kind of sad. I'm so glad that she has children and she's beautiful. I'm sure she'll be a very beautiful grandmother. I just think that a lot of women are being led astray with well-intentioned advice that ultimately is like not good advice. Moral of the story is what we all discover once we do become parents is that we want to spend as much time with our children as we can. You also learn as a parent that children do not demand nearly as much from you as you may think before you have them. And as for finances, you can find endless free clothes on freebie Facebook groups. You can thrift little baby onesies and such for like 50 cents at the thrift store. You can find super cheap or free diapers at pregnancy resource centers, among so many other things. And the rest, like the bottle warmers and the diaper pails and the wipe warmers and the bassinet that rocks your baby for you and the top of the line strollers, like those are all really nice. And of course, many parents want them, but they're entirely unnecessary. And I think that a lot of them are just totally gimmicks that end up making you feel like you need every single one of these things in order for your baby to feel loved and cared for. What babies need most from you as a parent is entirely disconnected from your financial status, and that is tender care and love. They want and need as much of it as you can give, which is very easy to do. As we near the close of this video, I do want to make a clarification that if you are in your 30s and you wish you had the family and the baby, but you don't have one or either of those things, I'm really sorry. Especially facing all of the intense marketing to freeze your eggs and extend your fertility or consider becoming a single mother by choice and all of these different things that you can do and you should do, except it's just tens of thousands of dollars and immoral. I imagine that that's really frustrating on multiple fronts to experience and have pushed on you. But to respect that babies do not appear on our own timelines is the whole point of this video. And I know really wonderful adults who desperately want children but do not have them. But they respect children so much that they don't place their own desires above the rights of children. It's admirable. I pray that the Lord places a baby on your timeline because they really are the most wonderful little people. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will catch you next time.